Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us for a fantastic inspiration from nature session. So today I'm going to be introducing you to the topic of biomimicry and how scientists can learn a lot from the world around them. Okay, so let's get started. Let's talk about inspiration from nature. So first of all, I'm going to give you a little introduction to WWF and tell you a little bit about our charity and what we do. So at WWF, we work to protect species all around the world. You can see here from penguins to polar bears to elephants to tigers. There are all sorts of iconic species that WWF works to protect. One of WWF's fantastic success stories is that the number of tigers in the wild are increasing for the first time in conservation history. There used to be only around 3,200 tigers in the wild, and now there are almost 4,000. And WWF's goal was to double the number of tigers in the wild by the next Chinese Year of the Tiger, which is 2022. So the best way to protect these animals is to protect their habitats. So let's have a look at some of the habitats that WWF works to protect. We work all around the world with businesses, government, communities to try and protect these incredible habitats for the iconic species that live there. So you can see here, of course, our incredible oceans. Our oceans cover 70% of our planet, so our little green planet is actually pretty blue. And the ocean provides food for billions and income for millions. And you can see here the marine turtle, which have been swimming in the oceans for hundreds of millions of years since there were dinosaurs walking on our planet. And you can also see here the humpback whale. And later we're going to be talking a little bit more about the humpback whale and how it's inspired an incredible invention. We have here the forests, and over half of the world's land-based plant and animal species are found in forests, so they're a really important habitat for animals. We also get loads of amazing things from our forests, such as chocolate and coffee, and lots of different tropical fruits as well. And our forests are essential in our tackle against climate change because our forests absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, so they're really important for stabilising our global climate. And here we have fresh water. Fresh water is so important, and we use fresh water for all sorts of things, for drinking, for making things, for growing food. And there's enough fresh water in the world for everyone, but it's not very well managed. So WWF works to try and make sure that we save water and keep our rivers clean and flowing. If we work with nature, we can make sure that fresh water is conserved for the animals that live there. You might be able to spot here some different species, and I've highlighted the little water vole, and I've highlighted that because it's one of the most endangered animals in the UK, where I'm from. And that's because we're taking too much water out of our rivers. You can also see here the beautiful kingfisher with its orange and turquoise feathers. And again, that's going to be discussed later because we're going to talk about an incredible invention inspired by the kingfisher. Okay, so this might seem a silly question. What are rubber ducks made of? I imagine you might all think, well, of course, rubber ducks are made of rubber, but actually more and more rubber ducks are made of plastic. So let's have a look at this short film, which is going to show you what happened when a whole cargo of rubber ducks were tipped overboard. On the 10th of January 1992, a cargo ship was hit by a storm. Thousands of rubber ducks were lost overboard. Scientists followed them to understand better how ocean currents work. ducks drift slowly through the Arctic ice from 1995 to 2000. In 2000, some ducks were spotted in the United States. And in 2003, some ducks were spotted in Spain. Then you will end up floating around in the ocean for a very long time, along with tons of other plastic rubbish. So if you find a rubber duck, give it a safe home. So there we saw a whole cargo ship of rubber ducks being tipped overboard, and scientists were able to work out more about how ocean currents worked by following the rubber ducks. But as we've already discussed, the rubber ducks were actually made out of plastic, and so they will end up in the oceans potentially for hundreds of years. And that's what we're thinking about today. We're thinking about smart design. Now, we know there's a big plastic problem in our oceans. Over 8 million tons of plastic ends up in our oceans every year. And plastic was invented in the 20th century. And it's a material that doesn't exist in nature. It doesn't rot away over time like other materials, such as rubber, which is made from sticky sap found in trees. It lasts for a very, very long time. And when it was first invented, people thought it's a brilliant invention. It's really strong, really light, really durable, it's cheap, and it lasts for a long time. However, we use it to make things that we only use for a few minutes. For example, a plastic drinking straw is not designed to last for a very long time, but the material it's made out of is designed to last for a very long time. So when we're designing, we really need to think in a smart way. We need to create smart designs that don't create waste. And a really brilliant way to do that is to take inspiration from nature. Before we solve a problem, we should always ask, has it been solved in nature? And it's really brilliant if you can look at the world around you and see if you can find some solutions to environmental problems. Let's start off by thinking, what can we learn from nature? We can learn all sorts from nature. You can see on the left, we have here the mussels which cling to the rock. And they manage to cling to the rock even when huge waves are crashing on them. And scientists have struggled to create, and inventors have struggled to create a non-toxic waterproof glue. It's something which is really hard to make, and yet here it is already existing in nature. We can also see here incredible structures. So we can see here the coral reef and the termite mound. And coral polyps create these incredible structures just by taking calcium out of the ocean with little energy and no mining. Isn't that incredible? And here we see the huge termite mounds made by the tiny termites. Now, they have created their perfect habitat. They've created a self-regulating habitat which has the perfect levels of oxygen, the perfect temperature, and the perfect humidity. And they do that by creating little tunnels all throughout the termite mound. And what's actually amazing is that WWF headquarters in the UK, our building also has a natural ventilation system, so it's really healthy for the planet as well. And that was based on the idea created by termites when they create their termite mounds. And you can also see here the beaver who has created their habitat. They've created an entrance to their home which is protected by water, so they're protected from predators. They've created the perfect habitat by building their dam, and the beaver uses local materials. So it's really important to have a look at these examples and think, what can we learn from nature? Let's have a look at some incredible inventions and problems that were actually solved by looking at nature. So we have here the high-speed bullet train. And the bullet train is really efficient. It's really, really quick, and it takes lots of passengers all over Japan. But there was a problem. When the really fast train left a tunnel, the air was compressed and it created a sonic boom which could be heard from miles away. So plenty of people complained about this really loud noise. And so just as it happens, the inventor, the top engineer working on the bullet train, working on creating the world's fastest train, was also a keen bird watcher. And he had noticed that when a kingfisher dives into the river to catch a fish, it can dive into the river with making a very, very small to no splash. And it was a much, much smaller splash than other birds of the same size. And so this keen bird watcher thought, I'm going to copy that unique shape of the kingfisher's beak and head, and I'm going to copy it on the bullet train. And the new design of the bullet train could leave tunnels without making a sonic boom. So it was a really smart invention. And just by copying the shape of the kingfisher's beak, they were able to reduce air friction sufficiently so that the design worked much, much better. Okay, so do you know who invented paper? You might not know that actually wasps invented paper. And you can see here a wasp building their nest. Now, before the 19th century, paper was often made out of old fabric or rags. And when an inventor actually witnessed a wasp creating their nest, they thought that would be a much better way to create paper. And wasps actually chew up plant stems and dead wood, and they munch it up with their saliva, and then that's how they create their wasp nests. And they're water resistant. And so inventors copied this to make the way we make paper now in the modern world. So these are all examples of biomimicry. So it means to imitate life or nature. Bio means life, and mimicry means to imitate. So it's really that concept where it's a really brilliant way to invent something amazing is to copy nature. We can often find the answer in the world around us. Let's look at some more inventions that you might not know were inspired by nature. So here we have some Velcro. It's a really effective fastening, and it was actually inspired by one of these plants. So do you think that Velcro was inspired by the holly? Do you think it was inspired by the dandelion, or do you think it was inspired by the burdock? So I'll give you a little chance to all write your answers in the chat box. Which one do you think is most likely the inspiration behind Velcro? Okay, I'm going to give you your answer. It was the burdock. And in 1941, a Swiss engineer called Georges de Mestral, he took his dog on a walk, and his dog became covered in these burdock plants. And they were really tough to untangle. It was really tricky to get the burdock plants off the dog. And when he looked carefully, he saw that the hook on the burdock plant and the fur on the dog created a perfect match. And it was a really brilliant way to create a non-toxic fastening which could be reused over and over again. Let's have a look at these beautiful humpback whales swimming through the ocean. Now, humpback whales are about the length of 2 school buses and about the weight of 5 elephants, and yet they are extremely graceful.
Such beautiful movement is rarely seen. Dance in the animal world is little understood.
Isn't that beautiful? I love that clip. So you can see here these wind turbines, and there was a problem with the design of these wind turbines. They would work really efficiently when generating energy from the wind. And then when there was a change in wind speed or direction, the wind turbines would often stall. And so scientists tried to think, how can we stop these wind turbines from stalling? And so they thought back to the humpback whale and how the humpback whale can move so gracefully through the water. I don't know if you noticed the humpback whale's fins, but the fins of a humpback whale have lots of little bumps all along the edge. And those bumps help to reduce drag, so the water can flow smoothly over the humpback whale's fins. And so scientists actually copied that shape, and you can see here the blade of a newly designed wind turbine, which has little tubercles just like the humpback whale's fin. And actually these are so much more efficient, these wind turbines. They can move smoothly through the air and they don't stall when there's a change in wind speed or direction. Another example of how we can copy nature for brilliant design. Now, I wonder if any of you can guess what this is. It's really tricky. It's a close-up of an animal. I wonder if anyone can think, what might this be? Well, you might be surprised to find out it is actually the close-up of a shark's skin. And sharks have been around since before the dinosaurs, so no wonder they have something to teach us about the natural world. The way their skin is formed, it is formed of lots and lots of little teeth or scales. And the way that they are placed together means that water is pushed over the top of the surface of the shark. And that helps sharks to swim really quickly because it pushes down the water really efficiently over the shark, allowing it to speed through the water. So you might have heard of these. You might have heard of the Speedo shark fin swimsuits. Now, it doesn't mean they're made out of shark skin. They're not made out of shark skin, but the inventors did actually copy the way that the shark skins are formed, the way that the teeth all sit together to create a fabric that does the same thing. So the fabric is formed in the same way, with all the little teeth stuck together so that the water is pushed efficiently over the swimmer. And between 2008 and 2009, 130 world records were broken by swimmers wearing these suits. And so these suits actually had to be banned at the Olympic Games because they thought they gave swimmers a really unfair advantage. They were a really effective design. And probably more relevant to saving the natural world and more interesting for us probably is the way that the shark skin has been copied to make anti-barnacle paint, because fishermen often have a big problem with barnacles building up on the bottom of their boats. And the scientists copied the way the shark skin is put together to create a paint that does the same thing. And the paint means that the water is pushed over the bottom of the boat and barnacles don't form on the bottom of the boat. And this means that the fishermen don't have to use the anti-barnacle paint they were using before, which was actually really toxic and harmful to marine life. Whereas this new type of barnacle paint is non-toxic. So a really brilliant invention there. Okay, so I think it's time to take a question break. I'm sure that lots of you have been writing some brilliant questions in the chat box. So let's have a look. Okay, let's have a look at your questions. Okay. I can see some here. Some brilliant questions here. I like these. So it says, from where did you get the idea of telling us about wildlife and habitat? Are you an environmentalist? Well, I do care a lot about the natural world. And I would really say that my job is an educator. And that's because I really think that the next generation is the key to solving the environmental problems that we have. And that's why I wanted to inspire you today to talk to you about how you might become an inventor of the future, or how you might really think big about solving some of our environmental problems, so that you can hopefully work to save our planet with us. So I really think if we all make some small changes and work together, we can make a big impact. And so hopefully your generation will have a lot to do with that. Okay, let's have another look. Here we have a question. How do whales make their singing voice? What a brilliant question. I love it. So the answer is that human vocal cords simply restrict the airflow like sliding doors, while those of a whale are more complex structures that join onto special sacs that line its throat. It has been suggested that when underwater, air can be moved between these sacs and the lungs, allowing whales to sing without losing air. Imagine that. Imagine being able to hold a really long note without losing any air. That's incredible. Let's have a look. And just to add to that, actually, a little bit similar is there is one invention which has been copied from the way that dolphins communicate. And dolphins communicate through echolocation. And that's how submarines communicate underwater. They send out signals which bounce off objects, and they can then learn more about the shape and size of their prey. And that's just how we've copied dolphins to create how submarines can communicate underwater. And then there's another question here from the audience. How do you identify endangered animals? Well, that's a really good question. And some of the work that WWF does is we work to monitor species all around the world. So there's all sorts of ways that scientists have come up with really clever ways to monitor animals all around the world. They can do things such as tracking polar bears' footprints. They can put camera traps in the middle of forests. It's not a trap, it's actually just a little camera placed on a tree, and then it will take photos, and hopefully it will take a picture of a tiger or a leopard or other species walking by. And we have a big report once every 4 years called the Living Planet Report, where lots and lots of data from lots of scientists is taken and put together, and we can really see how the numbers of wildlife are going up or down, and it can help us to work out which animals are endangered, and it can also help us to work out then which species really need help and which habitats need help. And what's fantastic about conservation is when you think, for example, I spoke earlier about tigers, and you think of tigers as a species that really need our help. When you go to protect those large areas that tigers live in, you're not just protecting the tiger, you're also protecting all of the other species that live in that habitat as well. And that's what's really important. It's really important to protect the biodiversity of an area, not just particular species that might be endangered, but all of the animals that live in that habitat. Okay, so I think I'm going to now go back to the presentation, but we'll have another chance for another question break a little bit later on. Okay. So now we have time for a little quiz. So I hope you're going to enjoy this. So we have some mystery boxes, and I'm going to ask if you can try and guess what is in the mystery boxes. Okay, so they are found in a coniferous forest and they produce seeds. I wonder if anyone has any ideas as to what this might be. So really think about it. They are found in a coniferous forest and they produce seeds. Let's find out. It was a pine cone. Okay, I have another challenge for you. Can you work out the connection between these runners and this pine cone? I wonder if any of you worked it out. So the connection is that the pine cones open when they're humid, because the pine cone knows when it's the perfect time to disperse their seeds, when it's rainy and sunny. And so the pine cone opens up and disperses its seeds when the atmosphere around it is very humid. And this inspired an invention. You might have guessed it now, which is the breathable running vest. And the breathable running vest is invented so that it's designed so that when a runner gets really hot and sweaty, the breathable fabric opens up to let some air in and let the runner cool down. And then when the runner cools down, the breathable fabric then closes to keep the runner warm. Isn't that impressive? Okay, mystery box number 2. It is a type of lizard and it can bark, chirp, and click. It is a type of lizard and it can bark, chirp, and click. I wonder if any of you know what it is. It is a gecko, and I've chosen my favourite species here, the leopard gecko. So let's find out a little bit more about geckos. It's amazing that geckos can actually walk up walls and across ceilings. And many people think geckos must have very, very sticky feet to be able to do this. Well, the truth is they don't have very sticky feet. They actually have very hairy feet. Who would have guessed? Now, the way that geckos' toes are structured is that they have lots and lots and lots of hairs on the bottom of each toe. And on the bottom of each of those hairs are many, many, many more nano hairs shaped like a spatula. So they're shaped with a flat end. And those nano hairs are so, so tiny that the flat end of each nano hair can actually bond with an atom on the wall. And so the geckos can walk up walls and across ceilings. It's just so impressive. And scientists have been copying the way that the gecko's foot is structured to make non-toxic adhesives. And these adhesives can be used over and over again. And funnily enough, they've named it gecko tape. So it's really strong and it's good for the environment. And one of the uses for gecko tape is even more impressive. They've used it so that robots can go to the top of very tall buildings to clean solar panels, because cleaning solar panels is a dangerous job for humans because they're often very, very high up. So why not add gecko tape to these little robots which can go and clean the solar panels for us? Okay, mystery box number 3. Clue. It lives in the Namib Desert and it has 6 legs. I wonder if any of you know what it is. It lives in the Namib Desert and it has 6 legs. It is the Namib beetle. And this is probably my favourite example from biomimicry. Have a look at the little bumps on the Namib beetle's back. So we're going to find out now how a beetle inspired a water bottle. So the beetle lives in the Namib Desert where there's very, very little groundwater, but there's a dense fog that comes in a few times a week. So the little beetle climbs to the top of a dune, lifts its, stands on its head and lifts its wings into the fog. And the top of those tips, the bumps on the back of the beetle's back, are waxy. And so the water collects here, drips down the sides of the waxy bumps into a little trough on the critter's back, which then falls down into the beetle's mouth. And this design has been created to make fog catching nets, which are actually 10 times more successful than previous designs of fog catching nets. And there is one company which is putting this design on the inside of a water bottle. So you could actually have a self-filling water bottle, which I think is one of the most impressive inventions that I've ever heard of. Okay, so you've heard a lot from me now. I'd now like to pass the challenge back to you to design your own invention and create a 3D model of your object. So after this talk, I would love it if you could continue to learn about the world around you and take inspiration from nature, and even better if you can design your own invention for an environmental problem. And I've got an example here. This is a really smart design by a young scientist, and they came up with this design because it's often very difficult to recycle plastic bottles where the lid of the plastic is made out of a different type of plastic than the bottle. And so the scientists thought, I would like to make a bottle where the lid and the bottle are all one piece, all one material, because they're cheaper to make and much easier to recycle. And you can even have a refillable option. And so she looked at the pitcher plant, and the pitcher plant found in the rainforest has a self-closing lid. And you can see how the pitcher plant on the left, which closes, is very similar to the bottle on the right, which has a little spout that you drink of, which then becomes the stopper. I think that's really clever. Okay, so when you come up with your design, let's recap how nature works. Nature uses renewable energy. Nature reuses and recycles everything. And nature uses local materials. You don't see beavers traveling miles to get the materials to build their dens, do you? So think about that when you're coming up with your design. Think about renewable energy. Think about reduce, reuse, recycle, and think about local materials. It's also really important to think about what will happen to your design when it comes to the end of its life. How will it be made into something new? So what is your invention? Give it a name. I think gecko tape sums it up perfectly. So if you could come up with a name as good as that, then that would be brilliant. And the company that creates the wind turbines that I told you about is a company called Whale Designs. So you can see where they got their name. Which plant or animals have inspired you? And how does it work? It's really important when you're coming up with your design to think about how feasible it is. And sometimes coming up with a 3D model can really help for you to work out how your invention is going to work. So when I've given this challenge before, I have had some fantastic inventions being sent to me. One young inventor came up with the idea of a fishing net which emits echolocation to warn marine animals such as dolphins not to come near the fishing net, which I thought was really clever. So I do hope that you'll be able to work on a design and share it with us, and I do hope you will become inventors of the future. So thanks so much for listening today. We are going to have a little bit of time for some questions, and we're also going to take a selfie. So everyone get ready to smile for the selfie. Okay. And I think we've taken the selfie, so let's have a look at some of your fantastic questions. And I think you've already met Matt, my colleague, who's been answering all of your questions in the chat box so far. So let's have a look if there are any more. Okay, we've got here a really good question. How do polar bears keep warm in the Arctic? So polar bears are perfectly adapted to their environment. They have a thick layer of fat around their whole body, about 10 centimeters thick. And they also have black skin, which helps to absorb the heat from the sun. They have also really clever fur. So each fur is like a hollow drinking straw. So the sun can shine through the hollow fur onto the black skin, which absorbs the heat and keeps it warm. And also the fur is transparent, so it helps it to reflect the light of the sun and blend into the snowy background. They've also got some other adaptations which are really incredible. They've got a second eyelid, which is transparent, which works just like a pair of sunglasses to protect their eyes from the glare of the snow. And they also have very clever paws, which are really just like snowshoes. They are really wide, so they can walk through the snow. And they also have lots of bristles on the bottom, just like a bristle brush, so it doesn't slip on the ice. Okay, let's have a look at some more questions. Do whales use their blowhole for a snorkel? They do. They use it to breathe in air. How long have you been working at WWF? I've been working at WWF for about 6 years, and I've been really lucky to meet lots and lots of young people in that time. And I've also been really lucky to learn a lot more about the natural world. And I would really say that the more you know about the natural world, the more you care about it. So I would really encourage you to get researching, get learning about our brilliant planet so that you can become environmentalists of the future. What's my favourite animal? My favourite animal is a leopard. I love all types of leopard, Amur leopards, snow leopards. They've always been my favourite, but I've learned about a lot of new species as well while working at WWF. And one of my favourite is probably one of the new species I learned about is the pink furry armadillo. So I would look that up. It's tiny and it actually looks a little bit like a piece of sushi. So I would suggest that you research that. And it's actually in danger because it is found in a region which is being cleared for palm oil. So worth finding out about that one. Can you explain how the wasp and the paper are connected? Yes, so the wasps chew little bits of stems and plants and mix it with their saliva, and that's how they create their papery wasp nest. And that's similar to how we create paper. We create paper by mixing water with lots of sawdust and wood pulp. And an interesting fact about how we make paper is that the machine which is used to make paper in a factory is bigger than a football pitch. It's huge and it takes loads of water. So really good if we can try and use less paper and also if we can recycle it. Which of these nature-inspired designs amazed you the most? I would say the one about the Namib beetle that we learnt about last. The Namib beetle is just incredible how it can take water out of fog just by using its body shape. Let's have a look. Are sharks harmful? Well, there are examples of when humans have been harmed by sharks, but something WWF works on is human-wildlife conflict. And really, when that happens, it's because humans have often encroached on an animal's space. So obviously, the ocean is the natural home of the shark and not humans. And so it's something to be mindful of, is that we really need animals to have their space to live, and we need to protect those areas so that humans don't become too close, because when that happens, you know, either humans or the animals get harmed. And actually more sharks have been killed by humans because of shark fin soup. So a lot of sharks are killed every year. So it's really worth thinking about the balance. And even though some animals seem scary, it's only because they're top predators. And those top predators really help to keep their habitats healthy. Okay, let's go down, see if there are any more questions. Just going to see, I've only got a few minutes left, so I'm just going to see if there are a few more before we go. Is a tiger an animal suitable for a rainforest environment? That's a brilliant question. And what I really like about tigers is there are lots of different species of tigers found in different types of forests. So there are tigers found in tropical forests in India, but there are also forests found in Russia, and you often see tigers in the snow. So there are lots of different types of species of tigers. It's really worth researching. So you can find out the different types of tigers and where they live and the different habitats that they live in. Let's see. If we do make an invention, is there any way we can send it to you? That's a really good question. So please do send in your inventions to education@wwf.org.uk. So I'm just going to say it again, education@wwf.org.uk, or you can share it on social media and use the hashtag #LearnToLoveNature. So it's the hashtag #LearnToLoveNature. And we also have our own Learn to Love Nature Facebook page, so you could find that and post your ideas in there. Okay, someone says their invention will be gecko shoes. That's great. And then let's have a look. How are the spots on a cheetah different from each other? That's really interesting. And what's so interesting about big cats is when you see animals like tigers and leopards and cheetahs, no two cats are exactly the same. They all have their own individual spots. And actually, a tiger's stripes are just like a human's fingerprints. They're so unique to each cat. And I also love finding out about the difference between the different spots between cheetahs, leopards, jaguars, snow leopards. They're all slightly different. And those spots are called rosettes, and they're slightly different shapes. Another thing you could research. I'm considering to be a vet in the future. What is one thing that you would recommend? That's a fantastic job for you to do. And what's so interesting about becoming a vet is you could work to protect people's pets, but you could also become a large animal vet, which wouldn't that be an incredible job to be a vet for animals such as rhinos or tigers? So a really brilliant career to pursue, and I would suggest that you really concentrate on your science and focus on your science lessons if you want to become a vet. And that's probably true for lots of environmental jobs, is to really focus on studying your sciences and also studying the world around you. And that's what we've been talking about today, just absorbing everything in the natural world and becoming a keen naturalist and learning all about nature. Okay, so I've had a really fantastic time talking to you today. Thank you for your brilliant questions. It's been so great to answer them, and it's been really great to meet you. So thanks very much for joining. I really look forward to seeing your inventions. I can't wait to see what you come up with, and I really hope you become inventors, environmentalists and naturalists of the future. Thanks for watching. Bye.